Jaz upam, da se niste preveč najedli, da ste malo krvi pustili še v možganih, da ste lahko še eno vajo danes izvedli z nami. Zdaj v bistvu pristopamo k najbolj pomembni temi, se meni zdi. Čeprav je opredelitev okoljskega problema zelo pomembna, to ste danes že videli, potem opredelitev ciljev in rezultatov tudi. Vmes boste na naslednjih delavnicah lahko opredelili svoje projektne aktivnosti, ki vodijo logično od problema do ciljev. Ampak pa sta še tu dva pojma, ki jo morate zelo ponotranjiti, zelo dobro razumeti, in to so deležniki in ciljne skupine. Predvsem zaradi tega, ker tako deležniki kot ciljne skupine so pod vplivom okoljskega problema in tako oboji vplivajo tako na cilje kot rezultate. Predvsem pa najbolj pomembno pa je, da oboji vplivajo na projektne aktivnosti. Imejte vedno v mislih, da so to ljudje, z vsemi svojimi lastnostmi, z vsemi svojimi specifikami, tudi če gre izključno za naravovarstven projekt, ki se ukvarja z naravovarstveno vsebino, je zelo velik del namenjen družboslovju. To so lahko posamezniki, skupine, organizacije, predvsem pa so ljudje. Ja, veliko bo komunikacije. Deležniki so tisti, ki so pod vplivom, tako pozitivno kot negativno, ali problema ali reševanja tega problema, so nujni za vaš projekt in so vključeni v aktivnosti. To so skupina, ljudje, ki nimajo direktnih finančnih koristi od vašega projekta. Potem pa so tu ciljne skupine. Te želimo s projektom naslavljati, njim so projektni rezultati namenjeni. To sta dve specifični razliki teh dveh. To zelo pogosto pride do zamenjave ene in drugega termina. Potem je pa še zelo pomembna zadeva, da se razlikuje med partnerji in deležniki. Na splošno je seveda, so tudi partnerji del širše slike deležnikov, ker so to tisti deležniki, ki lahko prispevajo k reševanju problema. To je res, temu pravimo tako imenovani notranji deležniki. Med notranje deležniki, recimo pri večjih organizacijah štejte tudi, ne vem, finančno službo, pravno službo, to tudi so notranji deležniki, ki ne bodo aktivno sodelovali pri vašem projektu, vendar pa so nujni za to, da boste izvajali projekt. Ne vem, kdo bo delal pri vaši javna naročila, na primer. Se ponovadi zelo pogosto zatakne pri tistih osebah. Pri Lifeu je pa specifika to, da projektni partner ni deležnik. Projektni partner oziroma pridružen upravičenec je vsebinsko in finančno odgovoren za izvajanje projekta, za posamezno aktivnost, vsaj za eno aktivnost v projektu mora biti odgovoren in ima od projekta finančne koristi. Torej je za svoje delo plačan. Medtem ko deležniki lahko vplivajo in vplivajo na uspešnost projekta in na samo vsebino, nimajo pa direktne finančne koristi. Potem, kako analizirati deležnike, to bomo danes še skupaj delali, se dela po korakih. To je en tak proces, ki ga izvajate vzporedno z opredeljevanjem okoljskega problema. Najprej morate identificirati, kdo so ti vaši deležniki in kdo so, je odvisno od vsebine. Izhajate vedno iz vsebine, kaj je problem, kaj so cilji, kdo lahko ta problem rešuje, kdo ga lahko preprečuje in tako naprej. Imejte v mislih, da se ignoranca ne splača. Najbolj znana zgodba o ignoriranem deležniku je nam znana že od otroških let, to je pri Trnjulčici, tisto čarovnico, ki niso povabili na krst, tista jim je naredila celo zgodbo, no pravzaprav. In spol je bila tisto kraljevstvo zamrznjeno nekaj tisoč let in dokler ni prišel princ in jih poljubil Trnjulčice. Tako da imejte v mislih, da res vključujete čim več deležnikov, z njimi opredeljujte problem in potem bo se skozi ta proces izkristaliziralo, kaj lahko vi dejansko rešujete in v kakšnem obsegu. Potem je tu analiza podpore, stopnje podpore posameznih deležnikov. Vedno, ko si jih najprej naštejete, kdo so, probajte oceniti, kakšna je njihova podpora do vsebine. Torej, kako projekt podpirajo, ali ga sabotirajo, ali ga razumejo, ali so celo nagnjeni k temu, da se ga reši. In skozi projekt, ali pa najboljše že prej, težite k temu, da jih boste iz tega konca pripeljali čim više po lestvici. To je vaš cilj. Vse vaše aktivnosti in dejavnosti morajo biti usmerjene k temu, da boste čim več ljudi prepričali, da bodo podpirali vaš projekt. Potem je pa tu še en pristop, to je pa analiza interesov in vplivov, ki jih imajo. Torej vsakega deležnika analizirate, kakšen je njegov vpliv in kakšen je njegov interes za reševanje problema. To je ena taka metoda z matrico in sicer si jih razdelite na 4 dele, lahko je to majhen pa velik vpliv, lahko pa imate na primer tu številko 1, tu pa številko 5, pa si jih rangirate na več razredov. Najmanj se boste ukvarjali z skupino, ki ima majhen interes in majhen vpliv reševanja problema. Nekoliko več se boste ukvarjali s skupino, ki ima majhen vpliv pa velik interes, da se problem nek razreši. Te boste informirali z enosmerno komunikacijo, njim so menjene zloženke, spletne strani, forume in tako naprej. Potem je tu skupina, ki ima zelo velik vpliv pa majhen interes. Te morate vedno poskrbeti, da so zadovoljni. Z njimi morate se ukvarjati tako, da se počutijo pomembne, da jim svoje odločitve razlagate, da se z njimi posvetujete, da jih imate vključene v projektne svete, v projektne forume in tako naprej. Potem je pa tu najbolj pomembna skupina, ki ima velik vpliv in ki ima velik interes reševanja problematike. To so ljudje, ki imajo zmožnost reševanja vaše tematike, imajo pa tudi zmožnost to preprečiti. Seveda zato je pomembno, da jih vključujete, da z njimi sodelujete, da se z njimi soodločate in da jih upoštevate njihove interese. To so nakratne take triki, kako jih analizirati. Imejte v mislih, da je to seveda proces, ki ga soustvarjate skupaj z opredeljevanjem okoljskega problema in šele takrat je na vrsti izdelava strategije. Kako boste posameznega deležnika nagovarjali, kako pogosto ga boste nagovarjali, na kakšen način. Seveda je razlika med tem, kako boste nagovarjali enega lastnika zemljišča, ki je kmet in ima delo celo sezono in ne boste z njim komunicirali prek Facebooka. Seveda k njemu boste mogli iti na dom, se priti k njemu bliže, na njegov teritorij, v tistem času, ko ima on čas. Če gre za deležnika, ki je mlajši od 20 let, je idealno medij kratek 3-minutni ali pa pol-minutni YouTube video. To je čist drugi način komunikacije. Seveda s tekom projekta preverjate njihova stališča, preverjate njihovo podporo in usklajujete svojo metodologijo. Potem so tu pa še ciljne skupine. To smo rekli, da so njim rezultati projekta namenjeni. Tudi te identificirajte, analizirajte njihove potrebe, identificirajte, kateri rezultati so, za koga, opišite jih, kako so velike to skupine, koliko je teh ljudi, ki obiskujejo neko območje, ali pa koliko je lastnikov zemljišč, ki imajo podobne težave v Sloveniji, v Evropi in tako naprej. In kar je bolj pomembno za učinek vaših rezultatov. Recimo, da vam eno tako primer dam. Vi imate ukrep na enem terenu in tam je deležnik sigurno lastnik tistega zemljišča. Ker je ključen, njegovo podporo rabite, da boste tam tisti ukrep izvedli. Potem pa mogoče v Sloveniji obstaja podobnih kmetov, ki s podobnimi težavami še v celotni Sloveniji, 10 000, v Evropi pa 1 milijon. In to, če boste naslavljali to kot ciljno skupino, če najdete učinkovito rešitev za upravljanje s podobnimi zemljišči, je to lahko učinek večji. To je pa ciljna skupina. Seveda tudi tukaj rabite strategijo, kako jih boste naslavljali, kako boste reševali njihove potrebe, kako jih boste vključevali, na kakšne načine, ali bodo to delavnice, ali bo to komuniciranje prek spleta, ali bo to komuniciranje prek medijev, zloženk in tako naprej. Za vsako ciljno skupino, ki je specifična, so specifične metode. Seveda aktivnost prilagodite tisti skupini, kateri je rezultat namenjen. Tako, v prijavnici je B4 obrazec namenjen temu, da se opredeli deležnike in opiše ciljne skupine. Namenjenih je 12 000 znakov, če vam tako za primerjavo dam, 10 000 znakov je namenjenih opisi okoljskega problema, 12.000 znakov za deležnike, že to vam pove, da je to pomembna vsebina za Evropsko komisijo. Tako da res si vzemite čas, dobro jih analizirajte in mislim, da vam pa uspelo. Zdaj pa izkušnje.
It can make your life very difficult if you haven't addressed the right stakeholders, if you miss someone on your way when you're implementing a project. It's essential to contact everyone when you are preparing a proposal. In our experience, people tend to be more positive towards your project. Even if they're not partners, they don't participate, but for example, local governments, local associations, people working on the same area, they should be informed about what you're doing, what you plan to do. They might help you see things you haven't considered. And actually, for example, we were starting one of the projects I talked to you about, steppe bird conservation in Spain. And we are talking about 4 SPAs in Spain. We're talking about 50, more or less 50 municipalities. And we were waiting to sit down and talk to each local government face to face before starting to communicate the project to the general audience. Because when you're communicating something in the press and people learn about your project on the press and you haven't even talked to them in person, it's a different approach. So we think it's essential to involve everyone. Again, related to your threats, your problems, your actions, your objectives, who has something to say, who is part of the problem, who is part of the solution, maybe both, maybe just one, but you need to consider them all. Use your experience, use the contacts you have. We always do. There are certain organizations that you have a close relationship with who can help you a lot develop your project, even if they're not closely linked to your project. Think about the links you can make to different institutions. It's essential to quantify as well. For example, I'll give you examples later, but when you're going to say, we're going to talk to farmers in this region, say how many farmers there are in this region, if there's a census. So quantify everything that you can in a proposal. Think about, even in the proposal, think about what messages you want to convey to each group you're going to target, and what you expect, and what are you going to do to achieve your objectives in terms of communication. Jesus and I were talking before that sometimes it's easy to identify indicators. Sometimes when you're communicating and when you're raising awareness, indicators are difficult, but try and see how you're going to quantify awareness raising or changes in attitudes or engaging local communities. And again, as I said, in our projects, we identify policymakers and say what we're going to do. I'm not saying you have to do it in your projects. I'm saying that we usually do. But obviously, for example, we do not develop new commercial products. We're not a business. So I don't know if that in that case, for example, if it should be feasible or suitable or appropriate to contact policymakers. But think about your project and how you can contact stakeholders and what you're going to say to them. That's an example of the project I was telling you about on adaptation to climate change in the farming sector, which is a continuation of the project we implemented on farming and climate change that was best of the best. And these are some stakeholders that we're addressing. For example, obviously farmers and farmers association. And we quantified, for example, in the participating countries of the project, that are Estonia, Germany, France and Spain, how many farmers there are, how many hectares are dedicated to farming, how many people we consider that we can reach through what actions, and what do we want to say to them. Technical consultants, as I said before, they are the ones that are going to multiply our message. We cannot reach every farmer in Spain. We wish we could, but we try to see who is going to help us reach our targets. Agricultural schools and training centers is essential, for example, as multipliers as well. Food standards and labels. If you want to work with the farming sector, then you need to think about the whole agri-food chain. We're talking to farmers, but we need to see the chain in perspective and see that there are industries that are working with these farmers who can ask their farmers to do certain things or to implement certain measures. And there's a consumer who's asking the industry what they want to see in their labels or what they want to do or that the industry does with their products. Insurance companies. As I said, my advice is to think who can be part of this scenario. We're talking about adaptation and climate change. Well, insurance companies have a lot to say. They are insuring, it depends on the country, but they insure farmers and farming productions. Then they are very interested in what you have to say about how you can avoid or adapt to climate change in the farming industry. And that's going to mean better yields, for example. As I said, agri-food businesses, agri-food media. We do not talk only to the general media, but also to specialized media who can help us define messages, reach our final target. And as I said, regional and national authorities, for example, who have a lot to say in policy making in Spain, in Europe, regarding farming, for the agricultural ministry, regional governments, DG Agri, etc. Climate and environment. We reach all those three areas. It depends on the country. Sometimes they're mixed, sometimes they're not. For example, in our country, agriculture and environment is the same ministry, but sometimes it's not. And this is the last slide I wanted to include. I don't know if all of you have seen this video. It's a selective attention test. If you have, well, most people usually have. If you haven't, I'm going to destroy the video for you, but it's a good example. You have the link here if you want to see it. You start the video and there's someone asking you to count how many times the ball is passed. There's a ball passing by, and each player is passing the ball to someone else. And you have to count how many passes there are between, I think it's the people in white. So when you finish, they ask you how many passers there were, and I think it's 13. And then they ask you, have you spotted the gorilla? And people who are very focused haven't seen that there's someone disguised as a gorilla passing behind here. So it means that when you're paying attention and focusing only on something, you might miss what's going around. And that can easily happen with stakeholders. You might be thinking, oh, in this project, farmers are essential, and I don't know, this local association. You might not have thought that local authorities are essential as well. Or you might not have thought that, for example, for us, insurance companies were essential, were key to the success of our project. When you're defining the project, first of all, but even when you implement the project, it has happened to us. We suddenly realize that there is a key stakeholder, maybe a small community, I don't know, a small association that is your key to many other people, and you hadn't considered that they are essential in your project. So we always try to do this exercise and see around the project who might have something to say, positive, negative. It's better to tackle anything that comes out since the beginning of the project or as soon as you realize. So my advice is to keep an open mind and think who might be interested in what you have to say and what you're doing. Those are my contact details. Thank you very much. Anything you need, just contact me. Phone me, email me, come to Madrid. Anything you wish, I'll be pleased to help.